the Sustainability Management Master's Program, you're answering one simple question. Do you care about your future generation? If you care about your kids, their grandkids, then you care about sustainability. And a sustainability manager is someone who has the tools to make people understand how they can contribute towards developing a sustainable world. We have both part-time and full-time students. Our curriculum is 30 hours. Instead of thesis, we have a research project course and a seminar course which provides them with the kind of research background they will need to be successful in their job. But at the same time, sustainability is not always everything about environment. It also relates to the business. They will take a sustainable business strategies course. They will take a project management course. Most of these courses are going to be taught by industry people, the people who are doing sustainability on a daily basis as a part of their job. Any organization that has a large number of employees and has a physical infrastructure, they will have to have a sustainability office. If you have the passion to develop and maintain a sustainable world, come to us and we will help you shape your passion into a career which will create an impact.
So it's a pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Susan Cornish. Susan is a loyal friend of the program. Susan is the principal consultant at Insight Plus Action, where she helps clients identify issues and develops research questions. Susan manages all aspects of projects from research design and data collection through analysis, reporting, and other deliverables. She has worked with global clients in many sectors, including packaging, consumer packaged goods, hospitality and food service, and waste management and recycling. So prior to Insight Plus Action, Susan was a vice president at several global consumer insight firms. So Susan holds a first-class honors bachelor's degree from Simon Fraser University in Canada, where she majored in geography and economics. She then did her master's and PhD from the University of Toronto, where her dissertation research focused on product innovation. Along with Bill Moore, Susan was the recipient of the first Friend of Stevens Sustainability Award in 2022. So, today, Susan will talk about sustainable packaging. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you very much, Tips. So we want to thank the sponsors who are displayed on the screen. Much appreciated in their support of the program. And we'll just see if we can operate the program. And Dibs has already mentioned Insight Plus Action, where we do consumer insights, consumer surveys, lots of business-to-business work, interviews, focus groups, sustainable packaging consulting, and research on recycling. And I know everyone today is very knowledgeable about sustainability. And I'm sure you know a great deal more than I do in many aspects of sustainability. But today we are going to take a look at packaging. And let me see if I can get rid of this black bar on the right so that we can see more of the screen. Okay, so sustainability. This is a company based in the UK that scrapes the internet. And they began doing that, scraping, accounting for searches on the topic of sustainability and social media posts on the topic of sustainability. Back in 2014, they started, and you can see the incredible growth up till the end of 2022 on both searches and social media discussions. And so I will mention that back in 2015 was when the video of the turtle with a plastic straw in its mouth went viral. And that was really one of several events that began generating this growth of interest in sustainability. So we want to start with a couple of questions. And you should all know that there is no test. So there are no wrong answers. But I wanted to ask everybody if you could send a few notes in the chat about if we asked you what sustainable packaging is, how would you describe it? What is it made of? Any thoughts in the chat?
Go ahead and use the chat function, folks. And
Okay.
people are like,
Great, thank you, people. Biodegradable, reusable, recyclable, made of recycled material, recyclable or reusable. You guys know it already. Those are exactly the not single use, thank you. Does not take loads of energy. You guys have got all the aspects of it. Not petroleum based, compostable, excellent, eco-friendly, recyclable. Okay, thank you, everybody. Let's move to the next slide. And has anybody ever changed what they purchase? And think about food products, because we all buy food on a regular basis. Has anybody bought a different brand because the packaging was, as you all just mentioned, made with recycled materials? It was a recyclable package. It was a compostable package, or it was paper instead of plastic. Does that ring a bell for anybody? Okay, Katie. Katie raised her hand.
I think she's saying that she has, but again,
Yes?
Yeah, I have. Do you want me to talk about
Yeah.
it or anything?
Yeah, explain what it was and why.
Yeah, I definitely overall try to reduce plastic. I feel like with groceries, a lot of it is buying things that aren't packaged at all. So, like, I try to buy fruits and vegetables that just aren't in any packaging.
Yeah, that's great. And anybody else? I'll tell you, this is my example on the right, the eggs, the Vital Farms eggs. I think they're based in Atlanta. And you can go, there's a code on the box, and you can go look at the farm and the chickens where your eggs came from. But obviously I switched to this because it is made with, see the bottom? That is molded fiber, which is by definition made with recyclable material. It's a recyclable package. It's all paper. It's paper instead of plastic. I'm not 100% sure if it's compostable, but they're happy chickens. So that's my story. Anybody else want to put their hand up and share a package that you substituted or no package at all?
I typically go with no package at all. But again, obviously, you cannot buy eggs like that. So we have stopped like buying eggs in plastic like cartons a long time ago.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and
And you'll see those.
most of the eggs that we buy nowadays, like from Whole Foods, are like cardboard cartons.
Yep.
You know.
Yes, that's been a real change in that category. All right, so thank you, everybody. And let's move on to, let me give you a bit of background on packaging. Now, if we wanted to totally understand the environmental impacts of our package, a lot of information would go into it, and we would do a life cycle analysis, and you guys are probably familiar with that, but we would have to look at our entire supply chain and see what the supply chain is doing. We would have to look at the environment for workers and communities. Are they working in safe and healthy factories and production areas? And then these are all the items that everybody mentioned. Does the package minimize the use of materials? Or better yet, is there no package at all? Does the package incorporate recycled content? Is the package recyclable? Can it be reused or refilled? Is it biodegradable or compostable? Now, the last 5, if we aren't doing a full life cycle analysis, which requires a lot of resources, the 5 things we're going to look at are what you all mentioned most. Number 1 is recycling. If we ask consumers about sustainable packaging, is it recyclable? Is the thing that comes up that's top of mind. Everybody knows about recycling. It's grown rapidly since the 1980s in the US due to a shortage of landfill capacity back in the Northeast in the 1980s. There just was no land left. And many states have initiated mandatory recycling for items they don't want to landfill, such as hazardous waste, tires, appliances, oil. You know, when you get your oil changed, you pay a fee for the company to handle the oil so that it doesn't go to landfill. Since 2018, a couple of years after that turtle with the plastic straw in its mouth, all the big companies are starting to set goals, and we will look at those shortly. The second thing to look for if you want your packaging to be sustainable is, does it have recycled content? Recycled content is a big way to reduce carbon emissions because you're not making that material that the package is made of from scratch. It was already made and you're reusing it. So that has a huge impact on carbon reduction targets for all the big manufacturers. So again, all those big companies, we'll take a look at list them in a minute. Now, reusable packaging, which many of you mentioned, is a much bigger challenge. And here are some pictures, partly because we're not really used to thinking this way in the US. There are 2 primary methods, 2 or 4 modes that fall under the category of reusable. One is refilling a package at home or refilling it at the retailer. So one of the big categories where that's easy to find refill at home is soap, and cleaning products. You buy the huge package at the store, you keep your spray bottle at home or your pump, and you just refill it with that much larger package, which uses a lot less packaging. There are stores where you can get bulk goods like grains and nuts, things like that, from a big container at the retail store. You can refill a package that you take there. A little bit less common is you send the package back to be cleaned at the retailer, or by e-commerce, you can have it picked up. So there are companies that will pick up a used package, take it back and clean it. Some fast food chains are experimenting with reusables, which are then cleaned on site, or they send it away to be cleaned in the neighborhood. There are some companies, Burger King, testing this in North America in some cities. Most of the testing on reusables at restaurants is being done in Europe. So of all the big CPG companies, 1.2% of their plastic packaging was reusable. This is a target with a lot of potential. Half of those large companies have no reusable packaging at all. And in my analysis, the ones that have the most are the cleaning products, because reusing a food package has obvious issues. Now, number 4 of our 5 areas biodegradable and compostable. Compostable is a subset of biodegradable. Biodegradable means it'll degrade someday, sometime, but nobody really knows. And you guys probably have studied some of these factors. Whereas compostable has been tested in a lab, and we know that that package will compost either at an industrial composting facility or in your backyard in a specific period of time. So compostable is much more specific. It has great potential to divert food waste out of landfills, where food waste is a big generator of greenhouse gas emissions. But consumers really don't know the difference in general. You guys probably do, because you're in the business. Most consumers are not really aware of industrial versus home composting, even when it says in the container. 13% of households have access to curbside organics collection. That's a low number. 7% compostable packaging collection. Most facilities that compost organics don't want packaging because it's different. They don't know what it is. Even the consumer can't really be sure. If a plastic bag says it's compostable, it could be made of anything. So there's a much greater margin of error with compostable packaging versus general organics. So this is another up and coming area with a lot of potential. And finally, material reduction. This is something that you guys all mentioned this too. Lightweighting has been going on for a long time. It's a definite way to reduce the carbon footprint, and it reduces the weight of the package, and it can be done with all substrates. The challenge is, will your water bottle still stand up after you take the cap off? We've all experienced the water bottle that falls over. That would be lightweighting. But they're starting to do with this with all the other substrates, especially glass, which obviously is one of the bigger challenges. So let's take a very quick look at what brand owners are doing, and then we're going to look at what consumers are doing. So here are the top 5 largest consumer packaged goods companies. And after sustainability really started ramping up, 2015, they all started coming up with goals. And these were recorded by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation based in Europe. And so all of these companies set goals to increase recyclable or reusable packaging, reduce use of virgin plastics. You'll see that Procter & Gamble was a little bit more cautious than all the others who set their goals at 2025. There are 200 or 300 companies in this Ellen MacArthur Foundation report from 2020, and a large number of them have changed their 2025 goals because we're now there. And many of them have made good progress. And I will mention Coca-Cola, which is in top 10, but not top 5, does have 99% recyclable packaging. But then they do all beverages. And that's a little bit easier than some of the other product lines of some of these other companies. Pepsi with Frito-Lay, they have a lot of snack food, which is a real challenge. So let's take a quick look. Now, here's what companies are doing. Among this group of 200 companies, they reported in 2023 300 packaging changes that eliminated many, many tons of plastic. Some of them were radical changes to the package, reusables, that type of thing, but 2/3 of them were replacing plastic with paper or lightweighting or switching to plastic from a plastic that includes multiple types of plastic to one plastic, which is much more easily recycled. And Bain, a big consulting company, says rigid paper is expected to see the largest growth rate among all the substrates, glass, metal, plastic, and paper in coming years. So here are some examples. Going back to 2018, L'Oreal was the first company in the US that put out a new line, a new brand in the US with a paper bottle. A paper bottle replacing a glass bottle reduces carbon emissions by 60 to 70%. So all of the spirits companies and some beer companies have been very active in finding paper bottles. Now, I don't have them in the presentation because that's replacing glass with paper. But L'Oreal was a real innovator. What happened to the paper bottle for shampoo? It did not work out well in the shower. So it went away and they replaced the paper with metal and glass in this. This is an organic, very eco-friendly brand line. But they reduced plastic by a great deal by getting rid of their plastic bottles. Ketchup, typically in in plastic bottles. Heinz announced, Kraft Heinz in 2022, that they were working on a paper bottle that had a coating, a spray-on coating in the inside that would allow it to be curbside recyclable. They're still working on it. I have asked people at Kraft Heinz, they've said, well, we think they're still working on it. So there are some real technical challenges, more so than us non-packaging engineers would expect, with many of these replacing plastic paper. Now, this is a category where it's been very successful. Many beers have been always in paper boxes, but the plastic rings are going away. Both Coke and Pepsi are working on different types of paper clips. And those launched well before in Europe. They're launching 2023 in the US, and this is out in the Northeast. You guys may have seen it up there, one of Coke's bottlers. So this is a category where it's pretty easy to put the beverages in paper, lose the plastic. Here are a couple of categories where, has anybody ever taken apart a Keurig? Well, I did not long ago. They were sued for saying these things were recyclable in Canada. All of that is still under debate. Companies, Nestle was leading the way with a totally fiber coffee pod that's 82% wood fiber with a bio-based plastic lid on the top that's said to be home compostable, maybe in Europe. I don't know. We don't have these yet. Again, both of these examples are in Europe. Kellogg's Kellanova is testing putting the cornflakes in a paper bag. I'm old enough to remember when the cornflakes came in a wax paper bag. Wax paper is totally unrecyclable, but all kinds of technical issues with the paper breaking as they fill it, seal it, keeping the cornflakes fresh. But that is being test marketed in the UK, and we're waiting for the next step. These are some categories you may have seen. During the pandemic, loose produce went heavily into plastic. And now we're starting to see a move away from plastic to paper containers for apples, for tomatoes. I've seen it in a few places, not widely spread, but the growers are very interested in paper packaging because they're very aware of what's organic and being sustainable, being in the agriculture business. Here's one that I bought, and as a consumer, you don't even have to think about it. It looks the same as all the other meat, but when you open it, you realize that there's a really thin plastic layer on that back, and that the back is really paper, so 80% less plastic. This is an upscale brand from St. Louis. All right, I saw a presentation from Frito-Lay, and the average chip bag has 27 layers. It probably has a 2 or 3 year shelf life. A company, and so Frito-Lay is testing paper-based bags in the UK. Here's a company in the UK that came up with a paper bag with a water-based coating. You always need a coating of paper, right? Obviously, it wouldn't keep the food fresh. So this apparently can be recycled at curbside or composted in the UK. Pringles came up with a paper bottom in Europe first, and we've got it now in North America. You remove the plastic top, and the paper carton is sort of recyclable. So they just got approval in the US to recycle that paper carton. And there are a lot of other dry food products in similar cartons. They had a special program for it in the UK because there's a lot of metal and plastic in the layers of this paper carton. But getting rid of the metal is a step forward. Now, this one I thought was interesting because in the same year, Mars, Wrigley in Australia and later New Zealand and UK came up with paper wrappers for these candy bars. Eliminates 360 tons of plastic packaging. I will tell you that a plastic company where I spoke at their internal company conference had ordered some of these, got these delivered from Mars in Australia, and the chocolate bars attracted a lot of ants on the front porch. So the paper was possibly not quite the same as plastic, but for most applications where you buy it at the store where it doesn't end up in your front porch, it's probably okay. But in the same year, Mars China did something totally different. Instead of a multi-material plastic wrapper, they went to a monomaterial polypropylene. And the reason, and that is recyclable in China, because where they rolled out recycling in China, in the big cities, before the pandemic, most people live in big buildings, multi-unit buildings. They had 8 different types of materials, and you were required to separate all your trash into 8 different bins, and there was a monitor to make sure you didn't screw up. And you were fined if you put the wrong thing in the wrong bin. So in China, it was practical to go to a recyclable film wrapper, but it wouldn't be in any other country that we know of. So there's a lot of creative stuff going on. I think this is our last one. Georgia Pacific spent 3 years doing research on what paper they could put 4 rolls of toilet tissue in. They can't do the big packages because the weight of the big package is too much. But they're eliminating 500,000 pounds of plastic by selling the 4-pack in paper. And that one I've seen at my supermarket. This one, I see other brands with this in the US. Procter & Gamble people have assured me that this is out in Europe, but making a bar instead of a plastic bottle full of liquid cuts carbon emissions way back. It's much smaller, it's much less heavy, it's easier for the consumer to take home, and it's saving a lot of plastic. So these are apparently out in Europe. Okay, so those are all our examples. So manufacturers are very busy coming up with new innovations on how to meet their goals to reduce virgin plastic use, how to make packages more recyclable, even some activity and reusable. But so these examples have been changing substrates. We're not going to go through all of these, but changing substrates is a really big deal. This was from focus groups after a packaging engineer conference where cost, quality, lead time, does it work on the machinery? All of these are really big issues. You don't want to have to rebuild your packaging machinery line just to come up with a box that is recyclable. So real challenges for packaging engineers. McKinsey and Eastman, a big chemical company, both have indicated that many of the new brands that have come out with sustainable packaging and products have not done as well as they expected. A lot of sales fell short of expectations. Consumer demand just wasn't necessarily there for these sustainable products where quality or performance maybe wasn't quite the same. So sales have not always followed these new brand lines. So those are the manufacturers. They buy a lot. If they switch to paper, they're buying paper for their packaging instead of plastic. And Fisher is a big consultant in the paper business. They made some estimates about what the impact would be of, for example, if 10% of plastic beverage cups globally were replaced with paper cups, that would require a 20% increase in global cup stock capacity, when in an average year, 4% increase in capacity is planned. These are big, huge capital investment plants. And all of that 4% currently is in Asia, not anywhere else. So it would take 5 years minimum for the paper industry to accommodate all that new paper that would be needed for a rapid switch to paper packaging. Would there be enough fiber and sustainably managed forests? All the brand owners want sustainable paper or fiber. How would that affect pricing? And what about consumer behavior? Where are consumers ready to switch and make radical changes? All right, I've got a bunch of data on consumers. Let's take a quick look. Going back to 2015, every week you see a study in the paper about how consumers are driving sustainable packaging, eco-friendly packaging, how consumers really want it. It's one of the 8 key drivers. People say, I try to buy products in recyclable packaging. I change what I buy. As far back as 2018, Americans were willing to pay 10% more. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind with the studies is this is mostly attitudinal data. This is consumers saying, I agree with statements like these, which are companies should be replacing plastic with environmentally friendly materials. Paper is better for the environment. Companies should be reducing packaging. Companies should be using more recycled plastic. So consumers will say, when you ask them, of course, this stuff is really important. Note that the 3 most important, or 3 of the top 4 most important items, the highest percentages, are what companies should be doing. What consumers are doing, these are the smallest percentages. I consider myself to be aware. I look for information on recyclability. Now, you guys in the group are certainly not these consumers. This was a general market study. You guys are all very aware. You're in the program and you're very knowledgeable. But we want to understand what consumers are actually doing at the checkout. Are they actually changing their behavior? So here's a study by McKinsey, a big consulting firm, Nielsen, biggest consumer research firm. They did a big analysis looking at actual sales data, not a survey. And they determined that products with eco claims had 28% growth over the past 5 years. They did this in 2023 versus 20% for other products with no sustainability claims. And this was the case for a lot of different categories. And no one claim consistently outperformed the others. Is it recyclable? Does it have recycled content? Is it reusable, etc.? Products with multiple claims did even better. So here is another study by McKinsey. I've got studies from several different big global consumer research companies, all of which I've actually worked for, and then a couple of big consulting firms. So on this chart, we've got 10 countries, we've got 10 packaging substrates, and people are ranking these on a 10-point scale. The ones that are good are blue dots, the ones that are bad are black dots. In the middle is gray. So they're ranking these substrates on sustainability. So we're asking people, what do they think is a sustainable package? We're getting a fair bit of agreement in the UK, US, and Europe, and India that paper and glass are good. And we're at films, plastic made with renewable or compostable materials. But Asia's a bit more iffy. If we look at the negatives, everybody knows that aluminum foil wraps are not good, and that packages that combine plastic paper and foil, not good. So there's agreement on what's not good, but not as much agreement. Asia's a bit different here on what is sustainable. If we ask, this is a US and Europe study, if we ask people what's the most sustainable, what's the most environmentally friendly choice for a package, paper wins out by far, followed by glass. And then everything else. Now, if we look at Bain, which is a very well-respected and well-known global consulting firm, I'm sure you guys probably even work with them. Bain did this study on, if we look at carbon emissions in production, in transport, general circularity, bio-based compostability across all these substrates, what's best? The more red bars there are, the better it is. So paper does win out generally, but sorry, this is under the black. This is glass on the right. Glass is not doing great. Glass has huge carbon emissions in both production and, as you can see here, there are no red bars, both production and obviously transport. It does okay on being able to be recycled. Now, if we look at plastics, rigid plastics and flexible do pretty well on carbon emissions in production and transport because plastic is light, and metal is somewhere in between. So consumers, paper is pretty good, but there are impacts of using more paper that aren't fully accounted for there. Now, what do consumers, so we saw from the McKinsey-Nielsen study, we've seen some vagueness in terms of what consumers know is sustainable. And if you look at this chart, you can see, so this is what, and this is a big global study. Kantar is the biggest consumer research company globally. So they've asked people, they give them this list, do you buy products for this reason frequently or occasionally? What you see is that all the occasional bars are about the same length and all the frequent bars are about the same length. That means people are buying products for these environmental claims all about the same. They're not distinguishing between all of these good things. It's locally owned, it's natural, it's recyclable, the ingredients are local, it's recycled materials. People are buying food products for all of these reasons equally. So they're not really sure. And you'll notice plastic free, everybody is sure we want less plastic, but what is the lowest number? Reasons that I buy grocery products or packaging, the lowest number, this is the least frequent thing I do, is buy plastic free packaging. I buy for natural, recyclable, all of these other things better. This is the egg example, free-range eggs. So what are people actually doing? What's their behavior when they're checking out? What barriers do you face when you go to the store and you want to shop more sustainably? It's important, it's expensive. I'm not an expert, I'm not really sure. It's hard to find those sustainable products or packages. They don't work, and I'm too busy to deal with this. If we ask people, will they pay more for sustainable packaging, recycled materials, packaging that can be recycled, compostable, paper replacing plastic, research I've done and other research that I've seen, we've got a good 30 to 40% said, no, I will not pay more. And I've seen a consistent 20% that will pay a lot more. And then there's the people in the middle. I did the study in 2020 and 2022. What happened over that period was the core group that will pay a lot more stayed the same. And the percentage that would not pay more decreased. And the ones in the middle, well, I might pay a little more, did increase. So I've got 3 studies to wrap this up. These are segmentation analyses where we did a lot of consumers, several thousand. We grouped them into different groups based on their purchasing habits, what they would actually do at the checkout. And it's interesting to look at these 3 studies. This one is US and Europe. And 23% said they would pay a premium for sustainable products. 10% said, no, not doing it. 17%, well, I care, but I don't have the time or the money. So we got 4 groups there. This group that will pay more are high income, Gen Z, and millennials. It's the younger age groups and higher incomes that are driving the sustainable product purchasing. Here's another, this is a big global study. They grouped people into 3 groups. Dismissers, they're not there. They don't talk about sustainability, environmentally friendly. They're taking no steps. They don't think what they do would make a difference. They're just too busy, young families, they don't have a lot of money. The eco-actives are maybe 18%. So similar to what I found, it's, maybe up to 20%. These people are changing their lifestyle. They're very concerned, they're taking action. I have other data from other studies I've done where these are the people that are biking to work, they're recycling, they're taking stuff to drop-offs, they're composting, they're definitely buying the sustainable brands. And there's the people in the middle, convenience and price, they've just got other things they need to, they're interested, but they're not, and they're worried about the environment, but they're not really doing anything yet. All right, here's one last study. This is US only. 15% are activists. So you see how the 15, 18, 19% are the activists. Those are the people who are really making changes in their lifestyle. And those are the groups who are active in environmental groups that are the loud voices that are really impacting companies who are making changes to what they're doing. Then we've got people who will do it if it's easy. Well, give me a recycling bin, sure, doesn't cost too much, I can do that. We've got people who just haven't had time to think about it. We've got, I don't have money to do anything except the bare bones. That's what I'm doing. And the disengaged, the denialists, just, this is silly, it doesn't apply to me. So we've all seen some of these different segments in different segmentation analyses reflecting lifestyle and things like that. So I will wrap it up there, and then we can take questions. So what we want to say in conclusion is brand owners have goals. Even though most of them haven't met their 2025 goals, they are taking it very seriously, changing their products and reworking those goals to something that is manageable. So much of the research that you'll see in the media is just based on attitudes. Sustainability in the environment is like motherhood and apple pie. Everybody knows it's important, but moving consumers to the point where they make changes in their lifestyle, not only in terms of buying more sustainable packaging, but all the other aspects, recycling, understanding compostability, all the other aspects of, in fact, looking at products, chocolate and coffee, is it grown in a sustainable manner in the countries that those products come from? And there are companies that are doing a lot of work in that product area as well to make sure that their farmers and the people all along the supply chain are being treated well and getting reimbursed fairly. So my analysis of all the data across all these big companies is that there is that core group of activists, and they are leading the charge. They will pay more, but there are many groups, especially when we start looking globally, where cost is a big issue and convenience is also an issue. That's why we have single-use plastics, is for convenience. So some aspects of behavior relating to convenience will have to change a great deal in the US before we're fully able to move into sustainable packaging in a big way. And so the challenge for companies is to find those consumers that are on the leading edge and find a way to bring the other consumers along with things that don't cost any more, and even try to meet convenience maybe in different ways. So that's my overview, and we can you want me to stop sharing and,
Yeah, like let's go back to the gallery view.
yeah, okay.
Okay. All right. So